Howdy peeps, I figured it's time for another video. My last one in all, a bit more of a personal matter I suppose. But, you know, when you're open to these life experiences, it does change you definitely, like, without a doubt. Now in this video, I've been thinking a lot with regards to the relationship between men and women nowadays, and how I keep saying we've got this epidemic, it seems, of NPDs running around in various different shapes and forms, male, female, toasters, you fucking name it, we've got it. It's a bit like an underground market for that shit, really. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about in this video is the concept of love. Now, I did a video quite a few years ago about me not really knowing what love actually is, and I think I've finally hit the nail on the head, as my understanding anyway. And it is as follows. You know, like I say, life experiences, you look back over things and, you know, you see things objectively rather than, oh yeah, you're in a relationship and you broke up and then out come the becauses, right? It was because this, you did this, they did the other, yada yada. It's like, I think it goes a bit deeper than that, if I'm honest with that one, in a lot of cases. You see, I've often said that we do in fact fall for the projected fantasy of the other person, right? What we want them to be, how we think they are. And as a result of that, I think relationships, generally speaking, and there's a double-edged sword with this one, right? For starters, you run the risk of getting friend-zoned, right? Which we all know what happens with that. You can get out of the friend zone. I'll tell you how to do it. It's real easy. Now, the difference is you have to make your statement to that individual. This is a two-way street. Guys can use it with girls, girls can use it with guys, guys and guys and girls and girls. See, I'm being all inclusive, including microwaves and toasters and all of that. Sarcasm aside, you got to remember with this, you cannot control how the other person feels about you. You can only make that statement if you've been friend zoned, right? And that is, if you want more than to be just friends with this person, right? And you've got to think real long and hard before you do this. If you date someone 3 or 4 times and you think that they're the one because they've put on this show for you and you're thinking that they're all that because reasons, you know, it's probably not a good idea to do it at that point. Even if they say to you, oh, I see you as a friend, at that point, personally, I would just take that and walk. But that's basically what you've got to do. You make your statement, you say, look, I really like you. I'm interested in more than just friends. I can't see you as just friends. But if you don't want that and it's not going to be reciprocated, then you're going to have to walk. You're going to have to do the walking, right? Now, it's a double-edged sword, like I said. You see, a lot of time, people, myself included, we find ourselves in a situation where the situation may seem ideal at the time, right? And I was saying about, in the beginning of my previous video, about snow globing and the Christmas holiday season, New Year's coming up, people not wanting to be single because they don't like being alone, or it's not something they're used to. And the particularly vulnerable people, or what I would call emotionally vulnerable people, and I'm not putting them down, I'm just saying it's what they are more likely to fall for the tricks and traps that will get set for them by women or guys, whichever way this is working out. to see them through the Christmas holiday New Year's period, which isn't going to be fun, like I said, in the new year, when you've served a purpose and they don't want you anymore. It's a painful thing, but being able to, I suppose, stick to your guns, as it were, if you have been dating someone and you were interested in something long term, right? Now with that, I'm not saying from a guy's point of view, right, you shouldn't be the one. You got to remember who works what with relationships, right? So I'll tell you again in case you've forgotten. Women are the gatekeepers of relationships, dating, procreation, marriage, and divorce, and potential for financial ruin for the guy mostly, depending on circumstances, of course, and it is subjective to the woman. Some women are gold diggers and they will take a guy for everything that they've got. I'm not saying that they will all do that. It does seem to be a bit of a high percentage that at least give it a bloody good go. But anyway, so if you were in that scenario and you've gone past, say, 3 months and they want to friend zone you, just tell them straight up, right, well, I want more than friends. If you can't meet me halfway on this one, I'm going to have to go my own way and find someone else to date, do your own thing, whatever, right? Do whatever is going to work for you, right? Now, the downside to that is even 3 months sometimes isn't long enough to really get to know someone, like, really well. And I don't mean like in between the bed sheets and all of that. I mean like as a person. Their traits, their habits, what they're like, if they have any, I don't know, mood swings for whatever reason, sometimes it's a psychological thing or they've got, in the case of women, it's usually like a hormone imbalance. I know it probably sounded like I said that sarcastically, but I actually didn't. I meant it for what it is. But then there are those that also have hormone imbalances, right? In men as in the sarcastic side, in terms of they don't have a great deal of respect or loyalty for the person that they could potentially be dating, or you've all heard the expressions of polyamory and women going on multiple dates throughout the days of the week in some cases. Whether it's because they can't afford, high cost of living, they can't afford to feed themselves, they can barely afford to scrape through to get the rent each month. So their idea of putting food in their belly is going out on dates, and if they like you enough, they might even take you to bed that night. And look, you got to be realistic as well. And this is another difficult sort of example for the women. You see, it's one of them. A lot of guys aren't very patient when it comes to getting that bedroom activity, right? Now, this also has its own double-edged sword. You see, if you end up with a girl that is, excuse the expression, putting out on the first or second date, it might reveal far too much about them. In other words, sorry to say it, but they're probably going to be quite easy, and it's not going to be a case of they're doing anything special for you. It's probably more of their own personal sensational gratification, as it were. Now, on the other hand, we also know that there are plenty of women out there that they will do that for the Chads, the Tyrones, Pookies, Ray Rays, whatever, right? But when it comes to the more decent men, the air quotes, more gentlemanly men, as it were, they make them wait. And all that freaky stuff that maybe the gentleman might have wanted to try, they won't do that for them, but they'll do it for all the bad boys and all of that, right? So it's a double-edged sword as to how you can read that situation. If they're wanting to get into bed with you too early, or even if they're making you wait, You know, it gets a guy to really think. And if a guy's having to think too much, in my honest opinion, if you're having to think too much about it, you're better off walking away. You know, if you're not that good of a judge of character. Now, like I said, going back to dating, which I guess it's not everyone's cup of tea, but to truly understand the dynamic. And I suppose this is where the expression of "she never loved you" comes from, right? A lot of the time it's she probably didn't love you, right? In the same sense as, and this is a difficult one, when I think of people that I've known throughout my life, and I've looked at some of the scenarios, and yes, I was attracted to them. Yes, I kind of, at the time, I would say at the time, I would have been interested in a long-term relationship with them, because I hadn't really seen them for who they actually were, right? A lot of guys do this. So you're not getting to know the person well enough, know their traits and their habits and their lifestyle. Instead, like I was saying, you tend to rush into things, and a lot of the time guys are just trying to lock them down into a relationship as soon as possible because maybe it's a scarcity mindset. You know, there's not a lot of options out there for men, realistically speaking, so a lot of the time you are going to try and like lock down the woman that you first start dating. And not that I'm really totally pro or for, should I say, dating multiple women at the same time. It's probably not such a bad thing. Now, I said dating, right? I didn't say anything else. I just want to make that perfectly clear. And like I said, for me, if they're willing to get into bed too early on within the sort of dating, getting to know each other, that to me in itself is a red flag. But it's also how you present yourself, right? Because like I said, they might be doing it sometimes from a psychological point of view. Maybe they want that validation, that they've got this guy, they're going out on a date, and they'll, by sleeping with the guy, it kind of, although it screws their SMV up, sexual marketplace value, market value even, marketplace value, you know what I mean? But it's another body to add, right? And with each body count, obviously the ability to pair bond, scientifically kind of proven, it just kind of, it doesn't do them any favours in the long run, and that's excluding any potential psychological issues that they may have brought into adulthood from their own childhood, i.e. princess syndrome, daddy issues, anything like that. You know, that's excluding any of that. That's before you even get to that stage. But again, a lot of the time guys are too busy not picking up on the signs that would normally, under normal circumstances, if you were to spend a great deal of time with them and watch them objectively, right? As in, like I said, you want this person, you want to know, your air quotes lover is going to have to be your best friend before anything. You need to know that they've got your back as much as you have theirs, because as soon as there's an indifference in that, you know, it's a slippery slope before you get to the end of that one, and it's never good when you do reach the end of that one for obvious reasons. But a lot of the time it does come down to the provisions. You know, it's not, I think guys tend to be we are more visual in our picking our partners, mates, whatever. And I don't mean mates as in friends, I mean partners to mate with and bond with and all of this. We are more visual, and we're also a lot more naive, because a lot of the time we weren't warned about, you know, the potential for toxic women. You know, all we've really heard is men are toxic. There's this toxic masculinity that boys inherently are just born with, and it's problematic, and therefore boys and men are the problem, and that's just the end of it, right? That tends to be the general mindset. It's really good if you're trying to put yourself above someone, if you think of it like that, right? It's a manipulation, it's a trick. And whereas guys will subconsciously think that, you know, they're the ones that do the running around after women. And it's like, no, you don't. You do not run around after the women, you know. Ideally, they should be showing whether they've got an interest in you, right? Like I said, double-edged sword. First of all, you've got to ask why they've got an interest in you. You know, what are you like financially? Do you walk around wearing the latest fashion designs that costs who knows how much per top, bottoms, shoes, all of this, right? Because that's the essence of what a lot of women, in particular gold diggers, fall for. It's not the person. It's not the guy underneath. A lot of the time, it's not the personality. And that's just the way that it is. You know, you take away the personality of the guy and leave them with just the provisions, i.e. the house, the car, the lifestyle, the luxury, the holidays, the money just available like an ATM. Well, then that will kind of show that in that instance the woman falls more for what you can do for them rather than who you actually are as a person. A lot of the time they're not interested in who you are as a person. It's literally what you can do for them. You know, and again, being that they are in a in a world of feelings and emotions, that is what they will hone in on. Like I said in the other video from a couple of weeks ago, they might have loved you last week, last year, or even yesterday. Tomorrow is still a different day. And if something, you know, if the woman isn't grounded enough and isn't enough of an actual, I suppose, tradcon, traditional conservative woman, you know, it's probably not going to end too well. But that's not to say that traditional conservative women are the greatest things since sliced bread as far as partners are concerned. They're probably not, you know, which is a mistake that a lot of guys still make. They think that, oh, if they get a traditional wife from Eastern Europe, for argument's sake, or, you know, somewhere that isn't West or European as it is today, whereas the traditions are somewhat different and I suppose more old school. I mean, even then, you got to seriously ask yourself, it's like, well, are they falling for, or are they interested in what you can provide for them in terms of lifestyle, luxury and all of that? Or is it the actual person? Because you've also got to take into consideration, you know, that's just looking at it from one aspect, and I get that it is quite negative, but I think you've got to be real in today's day and age. You see, you've also got to look at the things that I look at in a partner is communication. How good are they at communicating? How good are they at communicating any problems that they may have with me? You know, if they've got the hump or the arse about something. Am I going to be met with a stone wall? You know, am I going to be met with, or not met with, should I say, the air quotes silence treatment, where they block you, they don't talk to you. You might not have even done anything, or you might not have thought you've done anything, but they literally just block you, ignore you, don't want to talk. There isn't a problem, they're fine. Yep. Yeah, they're fine. That's why you're in that situation, because everything's just tickety-boo and there isn't a problem. Of course not. But still, I wouldn't be wanting it, or wanting to be in that situation where it just becomes a challenge and mentally and emotionally draining and exhausting for them just to say, oh well, they weren't happy with something not being done. But this is the essence of women as well. You know, this is how they are. So in a lot of cases, it does seem like a bit of a wasted effort, you know, even getting to knowing some women. Or when you do get to know them and you spent a lot of time with them, getting to know what they're like, only to think that, well, after all this, I wouldn't be interested in anything long term anyway, because you're still stuck in this mind pattern and you're unwilling to communicate about whatever issues you may have. So, you know, that for me is a no-no. You know, it's like, you got to be easygoing, you got to be communicative, you got to say what you mean, you got to be able to explain yourself. Like, I know it sounds like, but you know, you got to be able to tell me what the problem is without any drama, right? Just whatever. But like I say, a lot of the time this is a difficult task for a lot of women, it seems. Well, you could argue maybe that is just going down the manipulative path. They want to see if they can control you in some cases, and they do it on purpose. But yeah, again, this is not an aspect of love. You know, it's like, when was the last time you had, take one of your male friends, whereas you had a disagreement where you couldn't actually say what the problem was? Maybe they said something you disagreed with, and it was something you felt strongly about, and you were still able to have a conversation and be friends of it at the end of it. Now, sure, you're probably not going to be sleeping with that friend or whatever because they're male, or whatever the case may be, unless you're swing that way. But the point is, you're able to openly communicate your point and listen to theirs, and either agree to disagree or meet somewhere in the middle. You're not then going to go and try and manipulate the other guy, and like stonewall them and ignore them and just, you know, be like that about it. But realistically, a lot of women are like that, you know, and this is what makes dating so hard, and why guys are walking away in their droves from dates and relationships, because a lot of the time, you know, it's really not worth it. It's not worth the hassle. And I've even had, you know, sort of younger generations, younger inexperienced generations say to me, "Oh yeah, well, the juice is worth the squeeze." And it's like, you haven't even lived yet, you know. And a lot of the time, it comes from the younger generations, that they're in a relationship where I can see more faults in their relationship than what they're willing to accept as being real and being there. And it's like, every time, you know, whether the girl has got the guy wrapped around their finger or under the thumb, you know, and you know, they're still trying to convince me that, oh yeah, no, everything's good, it's not, it isn't, and they're just unwilling to see it. But like I say, with age comes experience, for better or for worse. And when it comes down to getting to know people, even as friends, and sometimes as I've been in situations, I've known guys and girls, I've known them for a hell of a long time, and I've never actually sat there and thought about them as either of them as being relationship material. Not that I'd date a guy, by the way, but with trying to put the shoe on the other foot, and I'll sort of look for the traits in some of the guys. It's like, well, what would be attractive to a woman from this guy? But again, I'm seeing it objectively, because I wouldn't date the guy in the first place because it's not my thing. And where it's been the women or the girls or whatever, I'll be looking at them objectively as well, and it'd be like, well, what else could you possibly bring to a relationship other than your drama, your problems, and your peace leave? Not a lot, you know. And this is just it. It's that when I really look at it and I realise that it's not a lot, and then you could ask the same question of yourself. Well, what do I have? Well, I've got worldly experience, you know. I've got a few other things here and there, you know, things going on, which, yeah, they do kind of make me attractive, I suppose. You know, I'm not talking about my beard. I am talking about more material things rather than me as a person. But at the same, I'm a lot more level-headed these days. When I was younger, not so much. When I was younger, I was probably like a lot of other youngsters. I was quick to fire off at the mouth. Would definitely not think before I spoke. A lot of the time it was just a case of spoke and then dealt with the consequences afterwards. And I used to have that attitude, oh well, if they don't agree with me, then who cares? Screw them, But then you sort of think back and you think, well, hang on, that's quite still stupid, dumb and immature. But that's my point. It's when you get to that stage and you realise that you were like that once as well. And then you got to also look at it from a relationship point of view, whereas it's like, do you want to live with that? Do you want to live with all of these problems? And then, it would end up in disaster. You'd either end up trying to raise a child in an adult's body, right, which ain't fun for anyone, because you're going to get the constant attitude, and the girls' attitude, I think, is worse than boys anyway, just by today's standards. I'm just saying. But here we are, So the question is, did she ever really love you? I think a lot of the time, no, is that they love what you did for them. It's how you made them feel, or what you did to make them feel that way, Not necessarily who you are as a person. And like I've always said, if you're in a relationship and you want to test the strength of that relationship, book some time off, tell them you've been fired and you're looking for another job, and then see how they change. If they don't change and they still stick to you and they're supportive and everything, you've got yourself a fucking good one. Wouldn't go as far as saying a unicorn, but you've got yourself a good one, worth keeping on to. But if they don't, well, that will tell you everything you need to know about that relationship that you were in and the partner you chose. And look, it ain't pretty. I'm just saying, when it goes that way, it ain't pretty. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thanks all for listening. Till the next one, stay cool, stay free. Peace out.